thank you very much for joining me here at Maple Leafs Man Advantage. I am Hawkeye. Today I'm going to do a video about the 1977 NHL Playoffs, how the Leafs did, and how the playoffs ended up rounding out into the Stanley Cup Finals and everything like that. So certainly if you like this video, I would appreciate it to hit like. I'd really appreciate it as well if you hit subscribe. And let you know there's lots of other videos on here as well. And as well, if you want to comment on anything, go ahead and do so. That's awesome. Talk hockey. Know your opinion if your opinion's in there as well. And sorry, I'm still wearing the old hat. I went around, looked around. This weekend I'm planning on going down to the big city of London. See if I can maybe get a Maple Leaf hat down there. Until then, I'm going to wear this baby here. But anyways, as I said, we're going to get into the 1977 playoffs. And the Leafs certainly had made the playoffs. They ended up third in the Adams. And the way that the new playoff structures worked out is they were going to end up playing the Pittsburgh Penguins in the preliminary round. Only a best of three. So you better get your game going right on puck drop, as you got no time. You got to get it going. Now, in the end, it worked out for Toronto. They ended up winning the best of three, 2-1 over the Pittsburgh Penguins, and were able to advance to the next round. The other series that went on, the LA Kings, they bounced out the Atlanta Flames, 2-1. The Buffalo Sabres beat the Minnesota North Stars, swept them 2-0. And the New York Islanders beat the Chicago Blackhawks 2-0. So you got those four teams plus the winners of each division. So you still got 8 teams going on or fighting off here in the second round. And the Leafs were going to be squaring off against, once again, the Dragon. They have yet to slay in the playoffs. For the third year in a row, these two would face off. So far, the Leafs have been swept in 1975. They took it to the limit, but lost in 7 in 1976. It's the Philadelphia Flyers. So anyways, for the Flyers, just to give a little look into their team, it was Rick McLeish who led the squad. He had 49 goals. Not bad. That close to 50. He also had 48 assists for 97 points, which also led the team. Bobby Clarke, he led the team with 68 assists. I've been meaning to do this. I remembered right when I printed this off. Hey, I'm going to show off some hockey cards I got. Here's Bobby Clarke here with the Flyers. That was 79-80, so that's just a couple years down the road. But there's Bobby Clarke. He led the team with 64 assists. And Paul Holmgren, he's another guy. I'm going to find him here. I got Paul Holmgren. This is also 79-80. Paul Holmgren of the Flyers, tough guy. He led the squad with 201 penalty minutes. He also had 14 goals, so he could put the puck in the net as well. He was the man to look out for in Philly. He was the tough dude. Clarke also led the NHL with 6 shorthanded goals. He was tied with Lorne Henning of the New York Islanders. He also had 6. So if you're on the man advantage, look out for that guy. He could spring away. Watch out for him. He had 6 shorties during the year. Easier said than done, I know. In net for the Flyers was Bernie Parent, who was back to playing a lot of hockey. During the season, he won 35. He tied 12. That also was a league lead, along with Roger Vachon of the LA Kings. His save percentage was down a bit. It was .899, making me wonder if he can be beat now. He's 31 years of age, I think. But his save percentage is down a bit, but he still had a good goals against. It was 2.71. That's a lot better. And he also had 5 shutouts. So, I was able to tune in here. So yeah, here we go. Trying to take a look here. In game 1 of the series of Leafs and Flyers, it was in Philly, at the Spectrum in Philly. The Leafs were actually able to carve out a 3-2 victory. Errol Thompson scored Toronto his third goal. They had 3 and under 9 minutes into the game, and they held on from there to hold on to the 3-2 win. That's pretty good. But I was able to tune into the second game. Got a copy of that. Saw a copy of that. That was game 1. It was at the Spectrum in Philly. The game was on Prism with commentators Hugh Gannon and former Flyer Bobby Taylor, goaltender. Bobby had played 43 games for the Flyers in his career, won 15, tied 7, had an .880 save percentage and a 4.07 goals against. But those are the two guys in the game here. So, before the game, it was announced that former Flyer Barry Ashby was diagnosed with leukemia. And that fact was brought up a number of times during the game, so that's pretty sad. Barry Ashby had leukemia. But in the game, the Flyers are really putting pressure on the Leafs and are looking to really looking ready to pour the goals in here in the game. I always think, and it applies here for sure, if the Leafs can keep these guys off the board for the first 10 minutes of the game, they may be able to turn the tide on the game, may be able to apply some pressure of their own. Call made on Harvey Too Tall Bennett. He looks like he's skating around hitting people with their gloves up in their faces. Not a clean hit. On the power play, George Ferguson passes one out front to Bob Neely, who smacks it past Perron. And on their first shot of the game, the Leafs score a goal and they're up 1-0. Leafs almost went up by 2 shortly after when Lanny McDonald fired one coming down the right wing, but Perron kicked out a nice save. Stan Weir came down the left wing and fired one past Perron this time to put the Leafs up by 2-0. Philly had done some good job getting chances, but Palmateer has been sharp and the defense good at getting the puck away from in front of the net. The Leafs even had to kill a 5-on-3 power play as Ian Turnbull and Ferguson both picked up penalties. Joe Watson had a marvelous chance as he was coming in off the point. Palmateer was down, but he rang one off the crossbar, and the period ends with the Leafs up 2-0. They're doing well so far. In the first intermission, Taylor and Gannon show replays of the goals and talk about the Flyers need to get back ahead of the Leafs here. It's not a good start to this series here for Philly. Now, to me, Philly did look good. They're down 2-0, but they look good. But the Leafs kept the door closed on until they got the power play and took advantage. They just need to keep pressing into the offensive zone, but also try and tighten up defensively and try not to give the Leafs room in their end. This is towards Philly. To me, the Leafs have just taken advantage of the chances that they've had. In the second early, Tiger Williams is coming into the zone, and he slaps one past Perron. I must add, though, as Taylor was mentioning, Perron is not very sharp tonight. Williams drops to his knees and does a little dance. This is right in front of the Flyer fans. This is for you guys. And I could tell that they must have loved it. Just kidding. The Flyers are now starting to not look good as the Leafs are getting beauty chances and are keeping control of the puck. It's 3-0. The Flyers get on the board, though, to maybe ignite themselves into the game as Bill Barber fired one from the slot. I swear I have his card. I didn't set it aside. Sorry there, Bill. Maybe in another video I'll get him out. It does ignite the Flyers as they started to put lots of pressure on the Leafs, but kept the door closed. Bobby Clark picked up a penalty, which then gave the puck and pressure back to the Leafs. Turnbull had a gorgeous chance all alone in front on the power play on an awesome pass from Weir, but Perron kept the door closed. Flyers did end up killing the penalty, but must say the Flyers seem to be getting penalties at inopportune times, and the Leafs are taking advantage or more control of the game as it progresses. Hard to tell the Broad Street Broly's not to take penalties. Very hard, but it is hurting them. It is. It really, really is. So, the man, the captain of the team, Daryl Sittler, Then gives the Leafs a 3-goal lead once again as he picked the top corner behind Perron. 4-1 Leafs. And here's Sittler. This is 1980-81, so he's wearing a lid here, a Jofa. But at this time period, he wasn't wearing a helmet. But that's Daryl Sittler right there of the Leafs. 4-1 Leafs right now. Ing Hammerstrom got out on the ice, and they mentioned this is the first time he played in the series. Too bad. Like I heard that about Hammerstrom. He wasn't an aggressive player. There's lots of guys that played hockey that weren't aggressors out on the ice. But this is the Philadelphia Flyers, one of the biggest bully teams of all time. So I can kind of see why he hasn't been on the ice. But they're up by 3, so he's seeing some time out there. So there you go. The period ends, and the Leafs are up 4-1. In the third, Wayne Stevenson takes over in the Philly net. Fred Shero must not have liked Perron's play or thought by making the change it may help the Flyers, maybe give Perron some rest, or just turn to Stevenson. We're going to see what happens here. Yeah, Leafs should feel pretty good as if they won game 1. They are up by 3 now in the third. They have run their number 1 guy out of the net, and all of this is on the road in their barn, and you're taking control of the series right here, right now. They must feel good. They have mentioned that the Leafs are very well positioned defensively, and I would totally agree with that when I was watching it. Red should know a thing or two about playing defense, as he played defense for the Detroit Red Wings, and he was a well thought of defensive centerman for the Leafs as well, having Punch Imlach, who seemed to have a defense first approach most of the time as his coach while he played in Toronto. The Leafs continue with this as they are well positioned in their zone, not giving the Flyers a number of chances or slowing the game down in giving odd man rushes, not happening like they had within the first 5 to 8 minutes of the game where the Flyers were really pressing them. The Flyers are playing the boards rather than firing pucks up the middle of the ice. At one time that was a cardinal sin. Not so much anymore in hockey. Just they use the whole ice. One time it was use the boards. Defense first. They're definitely making it tougher on the Flyers. A very ho-hum period with little action and lots of puck dumps. Just what the Leafs want. You're up by 3. The Leafs did it by beating the Flyers 4-1 and taking both road games of the series. They're going back to Maple Leaf Gardens now, and they're up 2-0. They are in the driver's seat. After the game, Bobby Taylor sits down and talks with Daryl Sittler, who knows the Flyers are a great team and is expecting things to be getting tougher for them, for the Leafs. Hugh Gannon then joins the two and enters the conversation about how the Leafs are handling the Flyers so far. Daryl looks good as a captain and must have been a great guy to play with. Bobby Taylor, he even suggested Daryl should have a couple of bubblies for his dry throat. Let's see how the rest of the series goes from here. Game 3 of the series was at Maple Leaf Gardens, and the Flyers ended up winning the game on the road. So 3 times in a row, the road team was won. They won 4-3 in overtime. Rick McLeish had 2 goals, including the OT winner and an assist. Game 4 saw the Leafs ahead 5-2 with just over 7 minutes left in the game. They looked to be really taking control here, but the Flyers were not going to lay down. In the game, Reggie Leach had 2 goals, including the game winner in OT and an assist, and the Flyers tied up the series with a 6-5 win in overtime. Big game there. That might turn the series around. But here's Reggie Leach as well. That's also from 79-80. Reggie Leach. Yeah, he was a very good goal scorer. He scored 61 as I see for the Flyers. Yeah. There you go. That's Reggie Leach. Yes, sir. And then in Game 5, Here we go. Yeah, and just as I wrote down here, it was so close that the Leafs were to sweeping these guys. They lost 3 and 4 in overtime when they were up 2-0. It was that close. But Game 5 was back at the Spectrum. Mike Palmateer, he must have played a great game. He pulled in 37 saves for the Leafs. But Leach scored both goals of the game, and Stevenson grabbed the shutout with 21 saves, and the Flyers won it 2-0. This led the series back to the Gardens for Game 6. This one I was able to see as well. And in the net for the Flyers is Wayne Stevenson, and for the Leafs it's Wayne Thomas now. Remember him? Mike Palmateer actually got hurt in Game 5 and is unavailable for this game. So you could think of this as a battle of the backups. We also see a bearded Gordon McRae on the bench for the Leafs backup for the night. Doing the commentating here was Don Earl, Gene Hart, and Terry Crisp, former Flyer. Good back and forth action in the first here with hitting and more chippiness than Game 2. Right after the Leafs kill a Sittler penalty, the Leafs bring it into the Flyers zone and keep it there. The puck drifts out to the point, and Ian Turnbull hammers it in to make it 1-0 Toronto. In the corner, in the Leafs zone, a big mix-up happens when Paul Holmgren punches Bruce Boudreau in the face, dropping him to the ice. Oh boy, poor Bruce. As well, Mel Bridgman turns around and punches Paul Evans in the face as he comes into the scrum. Oh boy, the bullies are out. Not sure what Paul said as he skated in, but that looked pretty dirty what Bridgman did there. This is why I do not like the Flyers, and to think I was siding with them in their first Stanley Cup win. Not anymore, guys. Holmgren, though, picked up 5-minute major and a 10-minute misconduct for this play here, and is actually gone for the game. The Leafs really need to take advantage here. I'm dreaming, but if you can pop a couple of goals in here, you might be sitting very pretty. This could be really good. Fred Shero strides behind the bench, getting his penalty-killing group ready, wearing his very 70s tie, like it's clownish, his tie, but he's getting his penalty killers ready. The Leafs power play never really clicked, though, during this power play. Too bad. And the Flyers killed all of it off. But then the Flyers got called for an illegal substitution, as the Flyers actually had no one in the box when the penalty ended. So literally when the penalty starts, like this, if the player is kicked out of the game, or if it's a bench infraction, you don't actually have to have anyone in the box. But when the penalty ends, you need someone in there. They didn't have anybody in there. And I think, as Crisp said, there was a long period of time at the end of the penalty, I think, running, so they didn't have time to put a guy in there. But personally, I think this is why they do it all the time. Just throw in a guy that doesn't kill penalties into that box. Somebody you're not going to turn to during this 5 minutes. And, yeah, but it didn't happen, so they got a penalty for that. The player then actually jumped on the ice from the bench, not the penalty box, from the bench. I have never seen that in a game before, and probably never will again. But yeah, they got a penalty for that. And it's funny because as I wrote, I guess Shero wanted a full bench to kill the penalty off. I don't know. I'm not sure if he turned to every single guy on the bench. I don't know. So the Leafs are back on the power play again, but it looked like the same power play, and the first ended with the Leafs up 1-0, but they have not been able to cash in on the power play. The Leafs might wish they had that golden opportunity later in the game. In the first intermission, Terry Crisp talks with Reggie Leach. Gene Hart also talks with King Clancy. So kind of interesting. Here, King Clancy, he's the yin to Harold Ballard's yang. Those guys were together, but King was so highly thought of by the Leafs, and Ballard, not so much by some of them. But anyways, that was interesting. In the second, though, the Flyers killed the remainder of the penalty. Borja Salming, I got a card out of his here. Borja. He was a legend. This was from 80-81. Wow, there we go. There's Borja Salming. The late, better than great, Borja Salming. He was brutally hooked to the ice about 5 feet from Dave Newell. He was the ref, who was looking directly at it, but he thought, no call. Hilarious how back then you could get away with penalties because you've been killing off too many of them. Maybe that's because you're dirty. So Toronto better watch out. Next call is going to be on you. Brutal play, as I think it was George Ferguson turned in his own corner and fired the puck out in front of his own net, right onto Bobby Clarke's stick. Wrong guy to give it to. He then fired it into the net from the slot. Boy, I can feel the Flyers gaining momentum here, and the Leafs are reeling a bit from that goal, tied up at 1. On a rush for the Leafs, Don Ashby, who did look good in the game with some high energy, a youngster. He's pulled to the ice once again right in front of Dave Newell, who looks at the play and once again thinks, there's no call on that one. Oh boy. Remember, the Leafs are going to get the next penalty, right? I am a true believer in having the players decide the game at a certain point, and the refs are deciding the game by not calling penalties that are penalties. And if you're the ultimate aggressor out there like that, yeah, that's not part of the game either. The Leafs, though, were really pressing and getting chances on the Flyers. Lanny McDonald popped one in behind Stevenson from the slot. The Leafs are back ahead, 2-1. But then Turnbull is called on holding, which I do not disagree with. It was a hold. You got him. It's a penalty, but, the Leafs are the ones that are going to have to kill it off. The Flyers looked good on the power play, but Lanny McDonald came into the Flyers zone with a puck and is almost beheaded by Bob Daly on a super dirty play. Wow. I'm really hating the Flyers now. Oh boy. On a play where the Flyers were putting one at the net, Gary Dornhofer ran Thomas, but Thomas pushed him out of the crease. After the next whistle, Dornhofer actually lost a contact lens on the ice and they had to look for it. Weird and funny things are happening in this game tonight in Game 6. Bobby Clarke, though, puts a nice pass onto Bob Daly's stick in the slot, and he fires one through the 5-hole past Thomas to tie the game at 2. So we're tied 2-2 after 2. And in the third, Toronto goes on a power play on a penalty against Jimmy Watson, who dumps Bruce Boudreau. Then Sittler fires a pass over to McDonald on the right wing, who shoots one past Stevenson to give the Leafs a lead again here at 3-2. Mike Pellick then picks up a penalty when he tripped Bridgman. Sittler then talked to ref Newell to get Bob Daly's stick measured, but the stick was fine. Darn, that's a $200 fine for the Leafs back in the day. So to any of you young kids out there, at one time you could not just use any stick you want or use any curve you want. Your stick had to be under certain measurements, and if it wasn't, you could get a penalty against your team during the game. Yeah, exactly. Oh boy. So Daly, he later gets the puck, shoots one at the net, and Thomas kicks it out. Right onto the stick of Rick McLeish, who ties the game back up at 3. Real back and forth game here. Don Selesky comes in the net and throws a hit on Thomas. He gets a penalty, and Hart, Earl, and especially Crisp strongly disagree with this call. Sorry, guys, but I know a lot of that was happening at that time, but you just don't hit goalies. If the goalie is fair game outside the net, as Chris says, then why did he get a penalty for it? The Flyers then turn the tables and measure Lanny McDonald's stick. Nope, his stick's fine too. So you get a $200 fine too there, Flyers. So There's some money coming to the league here. The game was getting ramped up and the crowd becoming more vocal. Tied up at 3. Lanny McDonald goes down the wing to the net, and Tom Gladden comes over and checks Lanny by throwing his gloves and his stick up in his face. Dirty hit, no call. Settler looks totally steamed, as I feel he should be on this hit. With under 3 minutes left, Bob Daly, who has been a big part of the Flyers' offense tonight, puts one at the net, and Jimmy Watson buries the rebound to give the Flyers a 4-3 lead. Thomas has had problems with rebounds tonight, and the Flyers have taken advantage of it. The Flyers hang on and take the series 4-2, eliminating the Leafs. Tiger Williams actually refuses to shake hands at the end of the game with the Flyers and skates off the ice, which Hart says is unsportsmanlike, which I agree. But I know when I played and we shook hands, I seem to remember we did it at the beginning of the game, not at the end of the game, and maybe some people today might find that weird, but maybe it was because of the feelings you had in the game that bloomed. We're going to go shake hands now, and I don't know. I seem to remember us doing it at the beginning of the game. Besides, I know a New York Islander Hall of Famer by the name of Billy Smith did the same thing. He didn't shake hands at the end of the game as well. Anyways, after the game, I was pumped and I had some feelings I had not had in a long time. As the Leafs are eliminated in a hard series that I was able to watch a couple of the games. One thing I know after this series is, boy, did I ever hate the 1970s Flyers. But boy, were they ever effective in their style of play with those guys. It really worked out. For the Leafs, they had some guys clicking in the playoffs. Lanny McDonald had 10 goals in just 9 games. Darryl Settler led the way with 15 assists and 21 points in just 9 games. Amazing. Amazing. That's over 2 points a game, people. Amazing. Who else but Tiger Williams led the team with 29 penalty minutes. And he had some offense going too, as he had 3 goals and 6 assists in the 9 games. He was getting a point a game. And he was on Sittler's wing a lot. Inlet, Palmatier was really showing his talents. He had 3 wins in 6 games, but had a very nice 9.923 save percentage and a 2.67 goals against. When Thomas did pick up 1 win, he had an 8.86 save percentage and a 3.86 goals against. The Leafs were very close, so close, and I do feel good about this squad when I was watching it. They look like they may have a goalie to work with here in Palmatier. Thomas ain't bad too, but they got Palmatier, and they got some great offense from some guys on the back end like Turnbull and Boreas Salmon, who I must say I have not mentioned him very much other than that one play, but he did amaze me at times during this game, watching him with the puck and watching him defend. He was a great defenseman. So the results in the other series in the quarterfinals saw the New York Islanders sweep through the Buffalo Sabres, who were a pretty darn good team. And the Islanders swept them away in 4. The Boston Bruins beat out the LA Kings 4-2, and the Montreal Canadiens swept away the St. Louis Blues. So we got 4 teams left. This pitted the Philadelphia Flyers against the Boston Bruins. It was much like the previous series, where the Flyers faced off against the Leafs. Very tight games, and the final score, very least. Game 1 saw the Bruins up 3-0 going in the third. The Flyers, though, tied this one back up at 3 in a great third period, yet it was Rick Middleton who popped in the winner for the Bruins in overtime for the 4-3 win. Jerry Cheevers also had 35 saves. The Bruins took Game 2 as well in overtime by a score of 5-4. It was Terry O'Reilly who snapped in the winner in double overtime. The first 2 games were held in Philadelphia, so once again, for the second series in a row, the Flyers lost their first 2 home games to open the series. You just can't keep doing that and get away with it. At some point, it's going to come back at you. In Game 3, the Bruins won 2-1 with Mike Milbury potting the winner. This left the Flyers with their backs up against the wall, looking and needing to win 4 in a row. Going to be a really tall order here. I was able to see Game 4 of the semifinals from Boston Garden, from the usual Flyer suspects in Don Earl, Gene Hart, and Terry Crisp. Before the game, they talked about the Flyers being down 3-0 and needing to play the old Broad Street Bullies style. Oh dear. They were playing the big bad Bruins. We're going to see how dirty this game gets, how much blood ends up on the TV screen. And that for the Bruins is Jerry Cheevers, who had returned the previous season to the Bruins after spending parts of 4 seasons with the Cleveland Crusaders of the WHA. He was the #1 man in Boston again and looking towards a chance at getting his 3rd Stanley Cup. And that for the Flyers was Wayne Stevenson, who became their guy for the 1977 playoffs. The coach of the Bruins, Don Cherry, was using only 4 defensemen in Brad Park, Mike Milbury, Rick Smith, and Gary Doak. That's it, 4. I couldn't imagine doing that nowadays. 4 defensemen. I know Scotty Bowman liked doing that too in Montreal. But you know what? It was working. Like, the Bruins are working well here. No doubt. Sorry, Flyer fans. I'm going to be cheering for the Bruins here from here on out. Yet this is a different Bruins team now. They got no Bobby Orr and no Phil Esposito either. Orr had signed as a free agent with the Chicago Blackhawks for this season. He did go on to play only 20 games. His knees were terrible and spelling the end of his career, unfortunately, for Bobby Orr. Sad there. Espo was traded to the New York Rangers the previous season, but in return the Bruins did receive Brad Park and Jean Rattel as part of that trade. So come on, they still got a great team here. Those are Hall of Famers right there. Right from the start of the game, Cheevers slipped on his mask. He had one of the best masks of all time. That's Jerry Cheevers, showing all the stitches on his face. Very cool. And soon into the game, the fight started. Stan Jonathan fights Rick Lapointe. Some chances, mostly for the Bruins here. Later in the period, Gene Hart complains about how the Bruins have gone over 2 full games without giving the Flyers 1 power play. I must admit I agree with his pleas that the Bruins are not exactly the most gentlemanly of players here on this group. They commit loads of holding, and I must say both teams by the end of this game also commit loads of hooking. It actually does not make for a great watch. This one wasn't all that fun to watch. When chances are stymied by defense clamping an arm or a stick on the player, not giving him much of a chance at putting the puck even towards the net, not in the net, but just creating that play. Sadly, this is one of those things I don't miss about old hockey. I don't know if I should add sadly on there. It's just that I don't miss. I'm glad that it's still not around in the game here. Anyways, the Bruins have an amazing opportunity to bury the puck in the net as the puck bounces around like a tennis ball on Highland Drive, where I played road hockey as a kid. The Flyers were able to keep the door closed, though. Rick McLeish really had a dynamite chance as he turns around with the puck near the slot, and he shoots it along the ice right at Cheevers, who is lying down on the right side of the net. Rick had the whole net to shoot at, but it's possible he may not have known this as his head was down at the time, and it looks like he released the puck before he looked. The period ends with no score, and the Bruins really outshot the Flyers here. It was 18-6. In the second period, Orest Kindrachuk fires a backhander off the face-off, and Cheevers makes a sharp glove save on it. Yes, Jerry sells it a lot, but I always love watching the old goalies selling nice glove saves. I think it did get in the heads of certain players along the years. The Flyers are getting more chances and not taking most of the period off offensively like they did in the first. Rattel ended up shoveling the puck into the net as a scrum in front of the Flyers net happens to start the scoring. The period ends, it's only 1-0 Boston. And Boston is out shooting Philly 28-17. but the Flyers are putting more offensive pressure on the Bruins as the shots in that period were 11-10 for the Flyers. In the second intermission, Don Earl talks with Pete Gammons. I remember him. He usually does Boston Red Sox games at the time, but he's there for the Bruins series. They talk about the Montreal Canadiens of this season and how they may actually be the best team of all time. Gammons may believe the Habs teams of the late 50s may have been just slightly better. Personally, I don't actually like pinpointing down on just one team or one season as the best of all time. I much prefer saying the Montreal Canadiens of the late 70s, they were one of the best teams of all time. Perhaps you could maybe say the Leafs of the mid-70s, or the mid-60s, I'm sorry, when they won 4 Stanley Cups in the 70s. 60s. The 60s. They didn't win anything in the 70s. When the Leafs won 4 cups in the 60s, that group of teams there, you could say as well, they had to be one of the best teams of all time as well. If you really think about it, to me, it's like saying Scotty Bowman was obviously a better coach than Toe Blake, and Ken Dryden was obviously a better goalie than Jacques Blanc. When they played during different times in different games, the whole thing, right? It can become problematic when other great teams never played at that specific time or are able to play against other great teams of that time as well, and vice versa. Much like in players of old and new. By my eyes, the best player I ever saw was Wayne Gretzky. And I really hate it when people say goaltending when he played was below average. And yes, he jumped in the league at a perfect time, much like Bobby Orr. When there were 4 new teams, one he was on, being added into the league right when he joined. So therefore, the league is watered down in comparison to the year before. And you know what? It was defense that really, through the 70s, was taking a big hit. And he came in 79-80, and the 80s just was like a bright light of goals. Offense was the name of the game. And it truly had become watered down since the days of Rocket Richard, a guy I don't hear people mentioning much anymore again. They were mentioning him for a while, and I totally agreed. He had to have been one of the best players of all time. And I imagine they still talk about him in Montreal, but I'm not hearing his name being thrown around a lot much anymore, which is really sad. Maybe it is, and I'm just not hearing it. You could even argue against what everyone is saying and state that if Gretzky played today with no hooking, no holding, and not much hitting, not that he was hit very much when he played anyways, and he would be able to use his imagination even more out there, what would happen? But I do question that statement, as he was allowed to use his imagination, and if you would go and hit Gretzky, there were some guys on his team you had to answer to. He was protected, no doubt. So I question that. But I do think Gretzky would be the star of the league, like McDavid is now. I think he would. His game would perfectly work in today's hockey. With the game of today is pro offense again, like it was in the 80s. But like going from about 1995 to 2005, off the top of my head there, it was pro defense. We're having teams with just average offense clawing all the way to the Stanley Cup final because they can play trap hockey or they can play defense well, work in that system, and also have great goaltending to coincide with how you're playing. And I don't think that's a good reason to get to the finals. That hockey at times was quite boring to watch. And really a low point in hockey, in my opinion. The black eye of hockey was that time period there. There were still some great games. There was always great games going on, but in general, it was Not every game is worth seeing, that is for sure. And so anyways, early in the third period, back to the game, Reggie Leach was got a hold of a rebound, but Cheevers fired a glove on it and scooped it out of the air, keeping the Flyers off the board. The Bruins pulled again further when the Bruins came to the net. Bobby Schmaltz shot it at the net, and Don Marcotte buried the rebound. Fred Shiro pulls Stevenson with around a minute and a half left in the game to get that extra attacker, trying to put some pressure on the Bruins. The Bruins, though, fended it off. Marcotte popped his second of the game into the open net, and the Bruins ended up winning the game 3-0 and swept away the Philadelphia Flyers in 4 straight games. They're off to the finals to face off against the Montreal Canadiens, who faced their stiffest competition so far in the playoffs against the New York Islanders, but finished them off 4-2 in 6 games. So let's take a little look here at the Montreal Canadiens. Yes, sir, and they had many guys to look out for. Steve Shutt led the squad and the NHL with 60 goals. Guy Lafleur had 56 of his own. That was second in the league. And he led the team and the NHL with 80 assists and 136 points. Great stuff there. Shutt had 105 of his own, by the way. Now, there was the plus-minus stat. I know it's a stat that doesn't really give the whole story of a player, but this one is just amazing. I have to mention it. Larry Robinson was plus 120. Simply amazing numbers there. Doug Risebrough brings some good muscles to the Montreal lineup, so he might be a guy to look out for. And Shutt led the NHL with 9 game winners. He was tied with Gilbert Perreault of the Buffalo Sabres. For the Stanley Cup Finals, the Montreal Canadiens had home ice and took advantage in the opener. They ended up beating the Bruins 7-3. Yvon Lambert had 2 goals, including a power play marker and 2 assists. Game 2, Ken Dryden made 22 saves, and Steve Shutt had a goal and 2 assists as the Habs beat the Bruins 3-0. Oh boy. Boston was going home, and boy, oh boy, they really needed to find their game immediately. But Guy Lafleur had 2 goals, including a power play goal and 2 assists. Jacques Lemaire had the power play game winner and 2 assists as well. Dryden made 23 saves, and the Montreal Canadiens won 4-2. We're asking for the impossible here now, as the Bruins need to beat the Montreal Canadiens, who lost only 10 times during the regular season, to beat them 4 times in a row. That's an incredible ask. So for Game 4, Cheevers made 26 saves for the Bruins. Dryden on the other end of the ice, he made 25. Lemaire, though, scored both goals for Montreal, including, of course, the winner in overtime, as the Habs upended the Bruins 2-1 and sweep their way to the 1977 Stanley Cup. For Montreal, Guy Lafleur was the man. He had 9 goals and 17 assists for 26 points in just 14 games. The penalty minute leader for the Habs in the 1977 playoffs was 23-year-old Bob Gainey, who had 25 in the 14 games he played. Kenny Dryden played all 14 games for the Habs and put up just amazing numbers here. He had a 12-2 record, a .932 save percentage, an absolutely sparkling 1.56 goals against, and he also had 4 shutouts in 14 games. Lafleur ended up winning the Conn Smythe as a playoff MVP. Kenny Dryden, he had to be in the running as well. Jacques Lemaire had an excellent playoff, scored 7 goals with 12 assists for 19 points. And Shutt had 8 goals and 10 assists for 18 points in 14 games. There were a lot of guys running for this trophy here. They were super stacked in Montreal. And there you have it. The Montreal Canadiens winning the 1977 Stanley Cup. And for the Leafs, the season ends at the hands of the Philadelphia Flyers once again, 3rd year in a row. But give you a hint in my next video, there will be some changes coming soon for the Leafs. So anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you're enjoying the hockey going on this year. So there you have it, and until next time, go Leafs go!